the number one responsibility of a tribal leader is to be a learner and a teacher. Because if you are learning and teaching those within the tribe, then the tribe will perform better and will succeed over time.
Why do you use the word tribe, and why is that meaningful to you?
So, you could use the word family if you like, but I use the word tribe because tribes existed at the beginning of mankind. And if you think about a tribe, it's a group of people that come together to protect and feed each other. That's the definition. The tribal description has nothing to do with any indigenous group. Its tribalism is the birth of mankind. Now, the reason that I continued on that is that once I thought, well, what kept these people together, thousands of years ago when Ugg the caveman was the ruler of the world? And I then went and I actually spoke to and interviewed a number of tribal type leaders, both in Australia and Fiji. And the number one thing that came out was, what's the number one responsibility of a tribal leader? Well, interestingly enough, the number one responsibility of a tribal leader is to be a learner and a teacher. Because if you are learning and teaching those within the tribe, then the tribe will perform better and will succeed over time. So, if I was to, align that with some indigenous group, I could align it to the indigenous Australians where I came from. And if we were to observe a group of indigenous Australians many years ago, the tribal leader would be teaching the tribe members to throw a boomerang. Why? Because the boomerang was the tool of survival. So I was able to link the fact that our tribal promise is a group of people that come together to protect and feed each other, and our responsibility as tribal leaders is to be learners and teachers. So our job is to help those we have the privilege to lead step into the best version of their personal self. So, that was, and there are other attributes of tribes: values, belonging. Tribes have to be future focused. They have to have they have to ensure that they respect their specialized skills within the tribe. They need to be warriors, and they need to celebrate.
I love that, learners and teachers. And this goes back to the beginning of this conversation where you were describing yourself, how you presented yourself to the organization and the people is like, man, I could use all the help I can get. So I see kind of the flip side of that is, hey, I'm learning how to do this and I'm going to continue learning. I'm going to teach you what I learn. And I also hope and expect that from you.
Exactly.
And empower them to be able to do that. Part of that is building in the values which empower them. You mentioned something where there was a little bit of resistance when you were implementing these new values, where a little bit of friction with the, instead of running it up the chain for decision making, the individual accountability. And so why is that so important? And how do you empower the team, the tribe, to be able to be accountable?
So you mentioned earlier words matter, and absolutely words matter. And that's why we took the word manager out of our vocabulary and everyone was called a coach. That's why we were leaders. That's why we had, values, not policies. But we created something called the Maniac Pledge. And this was something that we created to give people permission to be responsible. And the Maniac Pledge said, I am responsible for taking action, asking questions, getting answers, and making decisions. I won't wait for someone to tell me. If I need to know, I am responsible for asking. I have no right to be offended that I didn't get this sooner. And if I'm doing something others should know about, I am responsible for telling them. So what that Maniac Pledge did, it was a pledge of permission. So when someone they didn't have to ask for permission now to ask for something or to tell something to somebody. So, and you notice the third word in this is I am responsible, and the last word says I am responsible. So we were able to use the Maniac Pledge, and we just socialized it and talked about it, and this is a great antidote for a very, very serious disease that's in organizations. You may know it's called the na-na-ni-na-na disease, the finger-pointing disease. And I used to talk about this in the same way I'm talking to you about it. I didn't camouflage the issue with confusion to make out how smart we were. I said, I don't want na-na-ni-na-nas. I don't want Gomer Piles. You remember Gomer Pyle? Surprise, yeah. Surprise. So we used to name things. I don't want na-na-ni-na-nas. I don't want Gomer Piles. I want us to be very clear about what behaviors are going to work in the organization and what aren't. And we're going to be tough-minded and tender-hearted. We're going to have serious conversations. We are not going to protect our own comfort zone at the expense of other people's development, because that's what a lot of people do. They protect their own comfort zone because they don't want to have the conversation about the toxic element that got into the petri dish. But you have to have that conversation in a caring, sharing, and loving way.